Welcome to Breaking the News on this Thursday night. We are following the newest developments with Vance Belter, the alleged assassin of Mark and Melissa Hortman and attempted assassination of the Hoffman family. We're going to get right to it because this information is just coming into our newsroom this afternoon. Joining us today, Lou Raguse. He's been following this since June 14th, the day that these murders happened. We find out today that Hennepin County comes down with some heavy additional charges today. And why did Hennepin County do that, knowing that the feds already have Belter in custody and may even seek the death penalty?
Yeah, it gets a little confusing because there's two separate cases for the same crimes going on at the same time. And the federal one is the one that he's currently going through. He's in federal custody. And he's had court appearances in federal court, including just last week or the week before. And that is the trial that he will stand first. And before we get to that point, they'll have to determine whether or not they're going to seek the death penalty against him. Mm-hmm. Well, simultaneously in Hennepin County, that's where Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty is in charge. He's now been indicted by a grand jury on first-degree murder. And so that's the most serious charge in the state of Minnesota. If you're guilty of it, you get life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the reason that he wasn't charged sooner with that is that by state law, you have to convene a grand jury, which is a bunch of people come in and listen to the witnesses testify. It's secretly at the courthouse. Nobody can know about it. And then they decide the people themselves file the charge. It's called an indictment.
Okay.
And so what's new here is that he's now facing the most serious charges in Minnesota, which is first-degree murder for murdering the Hortmans, attempted first-degree murder for trying to kill the three Hoffmans, John, Yvette, and Hope, their daughter. Mm-hmm. A new one that we didn't know was coming was he's now charged with attempted first-degree murder for Representative Kristen Bonner from Maple Grove. Mm-hmm. This was the one where he stopped at her door after he had been at the Hoffmans already, mm-hmm. rang her doorbell for 2 minutes, yelling, "I'm police, come out." And luckily, she and her family were on vacation at that time. So it was, from the legalese part of it, it's a little interesting that he could be charged with attempted first-degree murder, even though no shots were fired and she wasn't even home. And it's Moriarty said it's because of the detailed writings he had in his notebook, mm-hmm. where he had details about her house, had a star by her name, which made it very clear that he had intent to go there to kill her. And that's what first-degree murder means, is the intent to kill somebody.
Right.
Moriarty also added a charge for impersonating a police officer, which is a crime in Minnesota, obviously, and for animal cruelty for shooting the Hortman's dog, Gilbert. Mm-hmm. And that is a felony charge as well. And so I think my takeaway from it is that Moriarty was rounding out all the charges that are possible to bring justice to the various groups that were affected by Vance Belter, allegedly, on that day.
Right. She made a key point that the crime happened. I remember this so vividly from prosecuting Derek Chauvin in the murder of George Floyd. It was important when they were trying to move that trial, the defense, that it was important to it be held in Hennepin County so Hennepin County residents could see justice in mm-hmm. their own community or see the court play out. And County Attorney Moriarty kind of made a similar statement in terms of this affected the people of Hennepin County. Mm-hmm. This affected the people of Minnesota, especially because they're public figures who are elected. And so it was important that they be charged here. And she said that he will be tried here. The feds do have to present him for trial after they're finished.
Yeah, and not just the people of Hennepin County, but the victims themselves. They did add a charge in federal court as well for Hope Hoffman. That's something that, the Hoffmans are like, he did try to kill her too.
Right.
So he should face justice for that.
Right.
And think about Representative Kristen Bonner. I'm sure that she's affected, even though she wasn't home,
right.
by that horrifying image of Vance Belter at her doorbell camera with that horrifying mask on, mm-hmm. there allegedly to kill her. And so he should face justice for that as well. People everywhere, animal lovers, and everybody was outraged that he shot this dog and killed it. And so he should face justice for that. And of course, impersonating a police officer, that just damages the trust that people have in police officers, unfortunately, because now when a police officer knocks at your door, this plants that seed in people's head where we got to make sure this really is a police officer because of the horrible things that Vance Belter allegedly did while dressed as and pretending to be a police officer.
And as you bring that up, it comes to one of the points made. County Attorney Moriarty gave us a few details that we didn't know. And as you just talked about that impersonation of a police officer, she shared a detail that I didn't know, that when Belter went to the Hortman home and Mark Hortman answered the door, and he said he was a police officer, Belter did, and had the flashlight and was demanding to come in the house. Melissa Hortman was on the stairs saying, ask for his badge number, ask for his department, and ask for his name.
Yep.
So she was doing the right things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And unfortunately, he had already elbowed his way into their entryway. So he was already in. And, you know, a detail that had come out earlier was he was shining the flashlight in their faces,
right,
which makes it obscures his own face, because if you're looking into a blinding light, you're not really don't know really what you're looking at, and that helped him because he had this mask on, not be able to tell. Like, you know, in hindsight, it might seem obvious, like, why would you let this guy in your house? But yeah, when you hear how he carried it all out and what they did, doing the right thing, I mean, it's just, you know, it's hard to say that anything could have been done different on their end of it.
Right. It's similar for the Hoffmans. New details there in that John, Yvette, and Hope are all awakened by this pounding on the door, seemingly because they're all there in the entryway. And they realize, according to Mary Moriarty today, that he's wearing a mask at some point where he's kind of saying he needs to come in the house, he needs to interrogate them. They realize it's a mask, and so they shove him.
Yeah. And some other details that came out earlier from the federal side of it when they held their press conference was that he had told them he was there because there was a shooting in their house. And so there was this confusion, like, I'm police. I was told there's a shooting in your house. I need to see your hands. You know, are there any weapons in the house? And John Hoffman said, yeah, but they're locked up. You know, they're answering questions from somebody that's presenting themselves as a police officer, asking questions that theoretically a police officer could ask. Another detail that it was new to me, and if it's come out, I missed it before, but it sounds like they had pushed him completely out of the house and shut the door.
The Hoffmans.
And he fired through the door
at
them. And we had heard, you know, a little bit about how the parents were protecting Hope, and it sounds like she was on the ground, so they were shielding her after the door was shut. The shots came through the door, hit the two parents. Luckily, both of them survived.
My God. Another thing that came out today, there was so much conversation as this happened, and especially in real time, in the state of urgency. We had shelter-in-place orders because we didn't know where the person was, that he had this list. And we knew before that the list had a lot of names of Democratic lawmakers, and that it had people in the reproductive rights movement and the governor and a couple of senators. But something that the county attorney shared today is that in terms of the Hoffmans, Hortmans, and Representative Bonner, their names had stars next to them and details about their kids, what their house was like, if it had a lot of stairs. And had you heard any of that before?
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard some of all of this stuff.
Okay.
But a lot of the stuff we heard today were new details from the same thing, if that makes sense. So like what I knew of the list was he had all these names, but he didn't have everybody's address. He only had certain people's address, and on some of them, like for example, how many kids they had, some of them what their spouse's name is. Some of them it just said spouse, like Moriarty mentioned today. And so that reflected from the federal side of it. They're prosecuting, you know, a stalking angle where he was doing this online research, which makes it a federal crime to stalk these people with the plan to kill them. And so, you know, the things that he was able to learn about them online, it's reflected in the charges there. And so that's where those details came out before. From the state side, what it represents is Moriarty talked about the star next to him indicates like that's somebody that he wanted to go get.
Yeah.
You know, out of this entire list, this was a prioritized person
for
him, for whatever reason.
For whatever reason, yes.
And so then it represents intent, because on the state side, they need intent to murder. That's first-degree murder or attempted first-degree murder.
Yeah, and that star thing I had not heard. She went on to say that there were others that had that next to their name, would not disclose. Obviously, there are things she cannot disclose, should not disclose before we get to a trial. One of those things is motive. We've all been asking, is there any clear motive here? And if, you know, we have a diary of a madman, basically, with these lists and things that he has said in court, and then from his jail cell to people who would listen, which aren't you or me. but that she wouldn't go into that either, that would be for the trial.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the last federal press conference, they did publish that entire letter that he left in the car.
Yes, to the FBI.
And so that I think, to me, I guess is, I think as clear as you're going to get as far as what his motive was, which doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was anticipating happening. Was it's not like a clear line where, you know, obviously he is a conservative person or a Republican person. These are Democratic victims, but it's not like it's somebody who's so mad about certain policies that he went out to go get these politicians. There's like a demented rationale and explanation that he was secretly trained and on a secret mission, and it's obviously all baloney. You know, and then the question becomes, does he really believe those things, or is that something he's saying to justify what he did? And we might never know that either.
Right. You asked that question of acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, and he basically just said baloney. County Attorney Moriarty got a similar question today about are you investigating the things that he's put in his writings or said, and she flatly just said no.
Well, in state court, I guess it is important to say that you don't need to prove motive. So you need to prove premeditation for first-degree murder and with the intent to kill somebody. And so the jury likes to have a motive to help things make sense, and usually they'll give them, you know, a suggestion for that, but it's not needed to prove.
Right.
So when they're deliberating, they don't need to decide like this is why he did it.
Right.
They just need to decide, you know, did he do these things the way that they said he did?
And in this case, as she alluded to, volumes of evidence, thousands of pages of reports,
she said
videos.
The most complex case in state history, which is remarkable. Right.
So that they have the jury's going to have a lot of information. Motive may not be important here. The stuff that he has said to people who will listen to him from prison, she said that could be used in court, but does it even matter? I mean, if the facts of the case are the facts of the case, the video,
you know, they hold on to all that stuff on the chance that he testifies, or, you know, they call it impeachment evidence, which is things to show that he's a liar.
Okay.
You know, and so like if his defense is, we don't know what his defense is going to be, but, you know, if his defense is this, they could bring in like this interview he did with this, you know, internet outlet and say, well, if they're claiming this now, then why would he say this then?
Gotcha.
You know, it's impeachment evidence is what they call it.
Gotcha. What's the number one thing that stood out to you that Minnesotans should take away from this? I mean, is this all just legal, or does this matter? Or what,
you know, I just think all the bases are covered.
Yeah.
That's what I take away from it. It's like he could be convicted in federal court and sentenced to the death penalty. And then from that standpoint, it doesn't really matter. But it probably still does matter to the Hoffmans, to Kristen Bonner, to the Hortman children, you know, and that he is held accountable in all these different ways.
In Hennepin County. In front of these peers.
For both.
Right.
You know, it's like, I don't, you know, it might be more of a political thing to see it as like a competing thing here, but he likely is going to be held accountable in federal court and then in state court. And the state court thing is not going to add anything to what he's already facing if he's found guilty in federal court. But it's just that all the bases are covered and he's being held accountable for everything that he allegedly did.
And to that point, let me just ask you one quick follow-up. Would it have been then kind of a dereliction of duty to not charge him in state court? I mean, doesn't the county have to do this to cover all the bases?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. Like if something completely fell apart in federal court, they could always jump in and charge him. But yeah, do it right now, get it done, and you know, then you don't have to worry about it.
All right. Lou Raguse, thank you so much. That's all for Breaking the News Plus on this Thursday night.